Hey, this is Kenji Lopez-alt from Serious Eats. I'm here today in the Serious Eats test kitchen in New York. I'm visiting here from California. For the last few years, I've been working on a few different things. You probably know about my book, and in that book there's a recipe for Southern fried chicken. The dish I'm making today is sort of a variation of that recipe with a bunch of Korean flavors and spices and ingredients thrown in. I mean, I think like most dishes it's still a work in progress, but I'm very happy with it where it is right now. So I'm going to show you where it is in its current state, and then hopefully sometime you can come to my restaurant and try it in whatever future state it ends up. But we're gonna start with a jar of kimchi. We use chicken thighs and we brine them in a combination of kimchi juice and buttermilk. So I'm gonna start by draining and pressing out a jar of kimchi. And we're looking for about a half cup or so of kimchi juice. And we're gonna set this kimchi aside. We're still gonna be using that later, but we're setting it aside for now. Now to that kimchi juice, we're gonna add our buttermilk. We're gonna add an egg. We're gonna add a few cloves of crushed garlic. I'm adding enough salt here to get the entire salinity of this solution up to about 3%. Kimchi on its own is about 2 to 3% salt by weight. The buttermilk obviously has no salt in it, so when you add them, it's about equal parts buttermilk and kimchi, and so you want to add just enough salt to get it to around 3% total. And then we're also adding a little bit of soy sauce, partly because it has more salt, but also mainly because soy sauce contains proteases, which are enzymes that kind of tenderize. And so all of these things are going to help flavor the chicken, and it's also going to help it stay juicier as it cooks. This is ground black pepper and Gochugaru, which is like Korean chili flakes. So they have some amount of heat, but they're really much more about the aroma. The black pepper actually has a fair amount of heat when you use it in this volume. So we're gonna whisk that all together. So now I'm gonna take the drained kimchi and I'm gonna give it a pretty fine chop. We're gonna be using this kimchi, blending it into some mayonnaise. You know, fried chicken and pickles is a pretty common combination. Rather than using cucumber pickles, we're just using pickled cabbage. You can do this with any cut of chicken, really. It doesn't have to be boneless. It can be bone-in, it can be chicken breasts. I personally, for this sandwich style, I really like using thighs because each one is basically one portion. It fits nicely into a sandwich. It's all right if there's a little bit of fat left on these, but you want to just trim off kind of some of the real excess. So we're gonna take that chicken and just drop it right into our brine. Ideally, you want to let this sit in here 8 hours or overnight. You can go a little bit longer. If you let it go too long, the chicken will start to turn mushy or turn too salty, but you definitely don't want to go really much less than 4 to 8 hours or so, preferably overnight. All right, so the next step in this process is making the sauce. The sauce starts with a infused oil, but we're gonna start with a few cloves of garlic. I'm gonna add some oil. And this is ground black pepper and Gochugaru again. And we're just gonna heat this up just until it starts to sort of sizzle a little bit. You don't want to let it go too far because you know, the spices are dry and they're chopped very fine. There's visual indicators of when this is done, so you're gonna start seeing it bubble. Particularly the garlic, you might start seeing it brown a little bit, and that's an indication that you're pretty close to done. But really, the best indication is your nose. This is smelling pretty good to me. Now we're gonna strain it immediately. Try and get all that excess oil out. So now we got Gochujang, which is another Korean product. It's a fermented bean and chili paste. It's a little bit sweet, it's a little bit spicy, and a little fermenty. That goes. We're gonna add our chili oil. And then we're gonna add a little bit of sweetness with some honey, some apple cider vinegar, and a little soy sauce. You can make this sauce probably decades ahead. You could like send this to this space station or on the Mars rover and it'll be fine by the time we get there. I don't know how frying things in zero gravity would work. Or with no atmosphere. You'd get a lot more sort of gas escape. So I think you'd get crisper results frying in space. And now what we're gonna do is dredge the chicken. We're gonna dredge the chicken. We're gonna dredge the chicken. We're starting with a 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. And then we also got a 1/2 cup of cornstarch, which helps keep it a little bit kind of crisper and not quite as tough. A tiny bit of baking powder, more Gochugaru, the Korean chili flakes, more ground black pepper, a whole bunch of black sesame seeds. You can also use regular sesame seeds. Black looks nice. And then this is garlic powder, which is one of the few times I prefer garlic powder over fresh garlic. The other time is on pizza. I prefer garlic powder on pizza. Yeah. Mix this all up. Here's the real secret, which is the same thing I do in my southern fried chicken, but you take some of your brine mixture, your buttermilk, drizzle it over your dredging mixture like that. You don't have to be super accurate, but a couple tablespoons of it. Work it in with your fingers a little bit. You want to see these little clumps of flour forming. And you want to take your chicken a couple pieces at a time. And you really want to pack that coating on. Some people like to rest their chicken after dredging it before frying it. I find that when I do that, it makes the coating a little bit too tough as the flour hydrates. So I like to dredge and then immediately go into my oil. This is peanut oil that's at around 325 degrees right now. By the time all the chicken is in there, it should drop to around 275 or 300, which is about what we want. Actually, these are pretty big thighs, so we'll stick with 4 in this batch. Well, the one way it's easiest to burn yourself when you're deep frying is by just being scared of the oil and kind of dropping things in and letting the oil splash everywhere. So yeah, hot oil kind of senses fear, so you kind of just want to get in as close as possible while you're adding that chicken so that you don't really splash. And once that chicken is in, you do want to let it sit just for a few moments until the crust is really nice and set before doing any kind of movement in there. At the thickest point, we want the internal temperature to be above 165, and we are definitely above there, so we're good to go on these first 2 pieces. So I'm going to take some butter, and I'm just going to toast up a potato roll. You can also use any kind of hamburger bun, any kind of soft bun will work for you here. Golden brown. Meanwhile, I've got some shredded cabbage. I'm going to chop up some of this dill pickle. So we're just going to brush this chicken with our sauce. Right, so the final thing we're going to add here is the spice rub, which is again some more Gochugaru and black pepper, this time ground into a very fine powder with a little bit of sugar and some more black sesame seeds. We got our kimchi mayo, big pile of pickles on the bottom, shredded cabbage. Does someone want to come eat this? Stella.
Oh, hi, Kenji.
What are you doing here?
I made some biscuits. I heard you were frying chicken.
Wow, this seems totally natural and unscripted.
Yeah, no, completely.
What are you making?
Well, I heard you were making some kimchi fried chicken situation, so I thought because you specifically told me to, I would make some black sesame scallion biscuits.
Those look great.
Yeah.
So for the biscuit version, I think I'm gonna go like super light on the sauce because it's a little bit heavy. And then I'm also going to skip the mayo, and instead we'll just garnish it with some kimchi. And I'm just going to add a little bit of honey here.
Yes.
So Stella, you want to tell us about what went into these biscuits aside from decades of experience?
These are the buttermilk biscuits from my book. And then there's like 3/4 of an ounce of black sesame seeds mixed in. And then also a little bit of scallion.
Glad I wore my slimming black sweater.
Yeah.
Welcome to this very special episode.
This is so much fun to see the two of you where you belong. Making great food and serving it to me. I see Korean fried chicken.
It's really more southern fried chicken with some
is?
Korean flavors in it, and then some kimchi and some biscuits. That's Stella made.
By all means, no, you didn't
I was
try
just
it.
toasting the both of you with
He's like, I wasn't gonna give it up. I just like being the person awkwardly standing behind them while they eat.
kind of great. These biscuits are pretty damn flaky and delicious.
I tried the version earlier on the potato bun, and I really liked it. And I thought this would be like too much. That's all right.
That's high praise from you.
Hey, ready?
Yeah, 1, 2, 3. Oh.
Yeah, it's definitely better that way.